My name is TOYIN AKINFOLARIN. Today I'm talking about safeguarding. Safeguarding in terms of understanding your responsibilities while working with children and vulnerable people. I'm going to start by defining what safeguarding is. Safeguarding is a term used in the United Kingdom and Ireland to denote measures to protect the health, well-being, and human rights of individuals, which allow people, especially children, young people, and elderly, who are also known as vulnerable people, to live free from abuse, harm, and neglect. People become vulnerable when they are unable to anticipate, cope with, resist, and recover from the impacts of disasters or untoward incidents. Children, young people, and adults, or malnourished people, and people who are ill are particularly vulnerable. The Liberty Church is made up of several teams, and that includes the Liberty Kids team from age 1 up to age 13 children, the Tribe team from age 13 up to 19, who are the young people. We also have vulnerable adults within the church and in diverse teams that are in contact with one another within the church. We also have vulnerable groups. Vulnerable groups are defined as any group or sector of society that is at higher risk of being subjected to discriminatory practices, violence, natural or environmental disasters, or economic hardship than other groups within the state, or any group or sector of society, such as women, children, or the elderly, that are at higher risk in periods of conflict and crisis. A faith organization can fall under this category, and hence it is important that we have knowledge of the subject. I will now talk about legislation and guidance. The Department for Education is responsible for child protection in England. It sets out policy, legislation, and statutory guidance on how the child protection system should work. From June 29, 2018, local safeguarding children's boards were replaced by safeguarding partners who are responsible for child protection policy, procedure, and guidance at a local level. The local safeguarding arrangements are led by 3 statutory safeguarding partners: the local authority, the clinical commissioning group, and the police. They have a duty to coordinate and ensure the effectiveness of work to protect and promote the welfare of children, including deciding to identify and support children at risk of harm. Children's safeguarding is shaped by the Children's Act 1989, but the key statutory guidance for Faith Group is working together to safeguarding children, and that states that every voluntary, community and social enterprise, faith-based organizations, and private sector organizations or agencies should have policies in place to safeguard and protect children from harm. This should be followed, and systems should be in place to ensure compliance in this. The CARE Act 2014 provides the legal basis for adult safeguarding. Under this, adults with care and support needs at risk of or experiencing abuse and unable to prevent themselves must be supported. I will now talk about the application to faith organizations as a whole. The breadth of people that faith groups serve and who they may see as in need of safeguarding support presents an enormous opportunity to help vulnerable people. But it also is a challenge in terms of managing workloads and defining the role of safeguarding professionals. Churches and faith-based groups play a vital role in the lives of many children, young people, and adults. People who contribute to the life of faith-based communities and places of worship have a role to play in keeping people safe. They also play a vital role in responding effectively and compassionately when someone comes forward to share concerns or disclose abuse. It is common knowledge that there have been high-profile inquiries, immense and long-lasting damage caused when an abuse is perpetrated by someone in a faith-related role. We have also seen how ineffective, unprofessional, or defensive responses are experienced by victims as re-abusive, sometimes worse than the original abuse itself. It is important to remember that safeguarding applies to both adults and children, and that while the focus in media has largely been on sexual abuse, there are many different types of abuse with which faith communities have a huge potential to identify and prevent. This include physical abuse, domestic violence or abuse, sexual abuse, psychological or emotional abuse, financial or material abuse, modern slavery, discriminatory abuse, organizational or institutional abuse, neglect or acts of omission, self-neglect, exploitive use of technology, spiritual abuse. Nurturing, respecting, and caring for a child is part of the teachings and values of all major faiths. There is a general expectation to care for all life and a duty to support those in society who most need care and protection. We define safeguarding as the action that is taken to promote the welfare of children and vulnerable people to protect them from harm. Recognizing the shared aim to provide a safe environment for vulnerable people to actively participate can help to bring safeguarding practices into the practices of a faith. Sharing experiences within faiths or looking to other faiths can help everyone to develop and improve safeguarding practices. Interfaith groups, organizations, initiatives, and events are also good opportunities to learn from other communities who may have very different traditions and beliefs. Understanding more about a child's faith and the role faith plays in family life is important for anyone working with children, families, or communities. It can help when considering appropriate ways to approach conversations around child protection and child safety. Safeguarding of vulnerable people should be the focus of all actions of faith organizations. People need to be protected irrespective of cultural sensitivities. Under UK law, different practices are no excuse for abuse or neglect. It is important not only to recognize but also not indirectly become perpetrators of this. Hence the need to be educated in the subject matter. I will now talk about communicating with vulnerable children and young adults within the church. Research has shown that adults don't always recognize, understand, or react appropriately when a child or young person starts to tell them about challenges they are facing. This can mean that the child doesn't get the support they need. This was cited by Anok and Miller in 2013. A survey or focus group and interviews with adults who work with children to find out how they can be helped to respond better showed that adults aren't always confident about knowing what to say or to do if a child starts to tell them about their difficulties. Further work done identified that it's helpful for children and young people in the moment of disclosure if adults use appropriate interpersonal skills to make it clear that they are listening and taking them seriously. Now, this can be broken down into 3 steps. First step is you show you care, you help them open up, give your full attention to the child or young person, keep your body language open and encouraging, be compassionate, be understanding, and reassure them their feelings are important. Phrases such as, "You've shown such courage today," can help. Take your time, slow down, respect pauses, and don't interrupt the child. Let them go at their own pace. Recognize and respond to their body language. And remember that it may take several conversations for them to share what's happened to them. Show you understand. Reflect back. Make it clear you're interested in what the child is telling you. Reflect back what they've said to check your understanding and use their language to show it's their experience. A quote from an educator says this: "This is the most sensitive and hardest part of the child protection journey. Our skills can either open up a child or close them down. It is critical we do things right by them at their most vulnerable moment." I will now go ahead to present 2 case studies from different faith-based organizations. Case study 1. There was a concern raised about a youth worker on several occasions about his behavior within a church community. But the adults in the church found it hard to believe that this popular young person was doing anything wrong. They trusted him. He was very charming, would converse freely and easily with families, and was always eager to help out in church. But he was sending text messages containing inappropriate language, and in some cases, a bit more than that. The community felt hurt and betrayed and wanted to know how they can stop this from happening again. People who have been inappropriate to children can be very clever in their tactics. They would also try to build a relationship of trust with the child and may do the same with the child's family and the whole community. This is known as grooming. Adults may find it hard to believe that a child they know has been harmed by someone who is part of their faith community. They may not know how to respond to concerns, or they may be worried about what will happen to the child, the family, the accused, and their community if they speak out. Case study 2. A teacher in a faith environment noticed an injury on the hand of a 7-year-old boy in her class. When she asked him about it, he hinted that the injury was not accidental. After school, she reported this to the designated person for child protection in the faith place. The designated person met with the boy 2 days later. His injury was healing, and he did not say anything about how he got the injury. The designated person felt it was not serious enough to report to social services. Later, it was found out that the injury was caused by his mother, who severely physically chastised him for not being able to memorize a faith text as expected of him. The boy went on to suffer more serious injuries which could have been prevented. Concerns that a child is at risk should be flagged up with the pastoral lead or the designated safeguarding lead within the church. The designated safeguarding person in an organization has a very important role in passing on concerns about children to the appropriate authorities and in developing and maintaining safeguarding policies and procedures. I will now go on to talk about working alone with a child. If you're offering a child or a young person a private space to talk and receive support, you should have clear safeguarding policies and procedures, such as have another adult nearby within sight and hearing whenever you are working with young people. In situations where having another adult nearby would be inappropriate or intrusive, you can make use of other safeguards by making sure that someone else always knows the time and place where you are alone with a child. The young person, parent or carer, and the person in charge knows the reason for the one-to-one contact and agree for it to take place. If you are not able to inform the parent or carer and person in charge in advance that you will be alone with the young person, you should do so as soon as possible afterwards. You and the young person know what to do in an emergency, how to contact their parent or carer. You have access to a phone or can summon help from a colleague by calling out. The young person knows they can stop the one-to-one contact at any time and knows how to complain or to get help if they need it. If you are alone with a child, physical touching is best avoided. You know when to stop the session should you become aware that the young person is uncomfortable about being alone with you. You make a record of the fact that you were alone with the young person, giving the reason for this and describing what happened. Events in the church. If you are planning an event for the church, you have to make sure you think about safeguarding in advance at the planning stage of your event. You should have clear written safeguarding policies and procedures and ensure all staff and volunteers have read them and feel confident following the actions set out. You may need to supplement existing policies and procedures with event-specific procedures. A risk assessment can help you to identify potential hazards that may occur during your specific event. Safeguarding procedure would be helpful to the volunteers to know what to do, for example, if a child went missing. You can follow these steps. Have a named person responsible for safeguarding children at the event. Set up a lost and found area and signpost it clearly. Ensure all staff and volunteers wear identifiable clothing or have a badge so they can easily be spotted. Recommend someone stay with the parent at the place they last saw the child. Have a clear strategy for searching the area. Advice on what to do if you see a child being harmed by an adult. The Liberty Church safeguarding policy clearly sets out the following: who to report a concern to. This is usually a designated safeguarding person or a senior member of the church. How the designated person reports to a statutory child protection service, such as social services or the police. Contacts for further advice. This may be a more senior colleague or a helpline. How to keep clear and accurate records of what was observed or said, the nature of the concern, when and where it was reported. Check a concern has been followed up. I'm now going to talk about housekeeping rules specific to the Liberty Kids arm of the Liberty Church. We have this following housekeeping rules. We expect the children to be of best behavior and be mindful of their language and attitude towards one another and the teachers. It is good to acknowledge that we are their role models and our language and attitude matters as well. We do not make physical contact, hit, push, or shove any child in our care, and we encourage and always remind the children likewise. English is the acceptable language in our church in order that we do not alienate children, teachers, and parents that are from a different culture. This is the only language allowed in Liberty Kids. We do not use street language or harsh words with the children, and we discourage the children from doing so. Persistent behavior will be brought to the parents' attention. We sometimes go through emotions brought on by upsetting circumstances. We should avoid reacting negatively in front of the children, especially if it involves a parent. You can request that the matter be dealt with separately. Should there be a situation in the class that is difficult to manage, ask one of the teachers on duty in your group to request the attention of the designated duty manager for the day or the team or group lead. That's an example of the housekeeping rules specific to Liberty Kids. Reporting concerns. In England, people working with children are expected to report concerns about a child's welfare to the relevant agencies. If you think a child is in immediate danger, contact the police on 999. If you're worried about a child, but they are not in immediate danger, you should share your concerns with the designated team lead or child protection officer, or follow the organizational policy for child protection as set out by the Liberty Church. Organizations that work with children and families must have safeguarding policies and procedures in place. I'm now going to talk about challenges and opportunities facing faith-based organizations. When discussing challenges and barriers to safeguarding in faith-based communities, common themes include the following: the trust people have in religious leaders or youth leaders, which both creates opportunity for abuse and makes it less likely that victims will be believed if they accuse a religious community leader. People do not believe that someone of their own faith would abuse another member of that same faith, tied with the desire not to damage the reputation of the faith group by exposing such individuals. The willingness to be welcoming and inclusive makes religious communities susceptible to people who wish to enter them in order to abuse. There can be blurred boundaries between adults and children, for example on retreats and other trips, due to close-knit relationships. Reliance, especially at the level of individual congregations, on volunteers to handle safeguarding issues, volunteers who will have varying degrees of knowledge and confidence. Hence, the reason the Liberty Church is offering this training. The expectations placed on the church appears to be a big factor in the repeated covering up of potential scandals. Community organizations, charities, faith groups, especially smaller ones, may have limited resources to devote to safeguarding. Many lack a culture of safe recruitment, supervision, human resources, and other management structures, which can lead to accountability and transparency, hence the robust system of Fortify, Connect, and Serve training within the Liberty Church before your assignment to the team, and continuous growth programs as well as clusters to keep you updated. Safeguarding is everyone's business. For faith-based organizations and communities, getting this right can be challenging, but it must be at the heart of everything we do. Recognizing the risk and understanding that abusers can hide in plain sight is more than a tick box exercise. It's about culture and behavior, says Paul Burstow. This is the end of this presentation. Thank you.